council meetings. And based on starting the meetings earlier in the day, the recommendation here was to change this to say a meeting should not extend beyond 10 p.m. unless council affirms by vote, which council can do. The next area of changes, and you'll see in red and yellow the stuff that was added. If a regular meeting shall fall upon the general election. This was done in a different section based on council's recommendation. We felt it was better suited to move to this section under meeting schedule, and this was something that council had recommended previously. We just moved the section of it saying that if it falls on a general election, the meeting shall be instead held on the next Tuesday night following the election or any holiday. The meeting shall be held instead on the next Tuesday night. This was something council previously approved. We just moved it to section 8. This is the other conversation. A recommendation is we started meetings earlier and found that people are a little bit fresher. And so this is still one of the conversations for further discussions, but we put down a recommended start time at 4 p.m. It initially said 6:30 p.m. The recommendation was to move it up to 4 p.m. and we'll come back to all of these. The next one is because we know that there is a new council chambers sessions would be moved to the public library. It specifically states that our meetings are held at Union's train station. We put in our Petersburg Public Library to account for the fact that we are actually building in the equipment and all of the stuff that will be available probably by fall in the library for council meeting. And we wanted to go ahead and address that now and put an either or, because you may have a special meeting at Union train station, but the site for the council meeting, once the library's auditorium is completed, would be the public library. The second one were just wordsmithing changes under freedom of information. We think it was a typo or possibly a typo. And the other is here, it says council shall give no less than 3 business days notice of all special and emergency meetings. I think the city attorney, please add in there. I think we said a special meeting is considered an emergency. I'll ask him to explain that. I believe that emergency meetings don't require 3 days notice, but special meetings do. Is that correct, Attorney Williams?
Right. The emergency meeting is designed for something, such as you have a major catastrophe where you may not be able to give the 3-day notice. And so by putting that in there, you kind of just negated your ability to call an emergency meeting. So I would recommend having that change. So you certainly want to have your 3-day notice for a special meeting. You have to by law, but I would strike emergency meeting from that.
Okay. The next area here is roundtable. It was just some wordsmithing. It was already there. It says all work sessions shall be conducted in a roundtable format. Initially, it said the clerk will assist council members and the clerk will in providing for the roundtable. We just cleaned up, said the clerk shall provide for the setup of the meeting room to create a roundtable format, and that would be via staff helping set it up. But council members setting up the roundtable didn't make sense, so we just clean that conversation up, and that would be when you're doing work sessions and things like that. Second rule, should I keep going through all the rules, or should we talk about the first section, or how would you like to do that, Mayor, before I go too far down that hole?
Any discussion on this? Let's have discussion on the first section first, and then we'll get moved to the next session. I don't want to get too far down, and Councilwoman Wilson Smith will start off with her first question.
Starting the meeting at 4 o'clock. Is that for the convenience of council? And how does that affect the public by starting at 4? Or some council members who don't get off until the regular business hours, to include employees of the city until 4:30, 5 o'clock.
That was added in there too, because one of the biggest complaints we have on council is our closed sessions. I proposed this to have a standing 4 o'clock closed session. It's like today we had a over hour closed session, and so when the regular council meeting start, it will start in a decent time, and we have staff on hand, which is mainly required for most of our closed session items, and then to start that time a little early instead of getting out typically around midnight to start earlier, around 5:30 to shorten the meeting time, but to have change the rules to have a standing 4 o'clock start time for closed session, not for the actual meeting.
So then that needs to be reworded then, doesn't it?
Yes.
Mr. City Attorney here would say 4 o'clock PM for a closed session and regular meetings starting at the 6:30 hour.
I was pushing, my recommendation was to push that meeting time up around 5 o'clock, 5:30, just to give us that extra hour. Because right now, typically our meetings run closer to 5 hours, which is kind of late, getting out around midnight. So if we started earlier around 5, we should be able to leave at a decent time around 10ish, 10:30ish, instead of closer to the midnight hour.
I'm
So that was
I'm
just
really
my.
thinking about, I mean, does that with the working class on council, does starting the meeting at 4 and 5 o'clock suit your work schedule?
With me, Councilman Wilson Smith, after I've had a long day, typically around 10 o'clock at night, everyone is about mentally spent. So just to get us out of there fresh, because if we start, let's say for instance, I start my day at 7 o'clock, and once it hits that 10, 11 o'clock hour, it's a very, very long day. And I've noticed that our meetings it's been a lot easier having that fresher time of the day instead of starting after the dinner hour. So it was just a recommendation from my end. Councilman Hill, you work as well. You want to chime in?
Yeah. I agree with us starting early. I mean, some of our meetings have been like marathons, so I agree with us starting early. And then if you look at our employees that have to be at the meetings and what have you, and if they have to work most of the day and then come to the meeting at 6:30 and then get out, let's say 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then come right back around and be fresh for work at 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's a lot on them as well. As far as with the public, a lot of people, with this COVID virus, a lot of people are just working from home. And that we pray that it don't be around here always, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of companies and a lot of businesses are going to be doing things differently as far as the way they work. I think a lot of people, the brick and mortar situation may not be around for a long time. I think a lot of people are going to be doing things via technology, as opposed to, because I have a lot of my clients, and a lot of them are talking about, their offices and things like that for the government. Just talking about just doing everything technology wise. So I am concerned about the impact that it may have with citizens that want to attend, but we do know most of the citizens who do attend meetings and things of that nature. And by the time we actually get to the meeting part, because we always have let's say what it is. We always have a closed session. So if we could start our meetings at 4, be in our closed session as soon as 4, we take about an hour and 15 minutes, 5 o'clock, 5:30, we start our meeting. By the time the public period comes, when people want to voice their opinion and their comments and concerns, they'll be there for that as well. And then by the end of the meeting, we'll be into the voting of our actual action items. So everybody will still be able to participate that I'm looking at. And then we won't be there all day. I looked at some other localities and their meetings take, 2 hours. So, hour and 30 minutes, 3 at the most. So I'm in favor of moving the time up.
All right, Councilwoman Smith Lee, I know you have some travel time typically.
Yeah, because of COVID, I log on at 6 and basically work till like about 3:30. And there are times when, maybe I have some meetings that I have to attend, but basically I'm done with work between 3:30 and 4. So I'm good. I'm okay. And I'll just have a set schedule. The situation that I have been in, and I'm gonna be relinquish of one of my jobs. I'm excited. I'm training someone for another position. So I will be good.
Okay. And thank you, Vice Mayor Spiffley. Next, Councilman Cuthbert, you want to weigh in on what time you typically are out of court on a typical day?
I think any of these times will be fine. I can adjust my schedule as a general rule.
Okay. Councilman Myers?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, back to Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
I can see doing a closed session at 4. I really can.
Mhm.
But I ask us, we've all talked to each other, so we know what we want. We know what's convenient to us. Are these times convenient to the citizen? That's my biggest thing. We're going to change these times for us, but what about them? They may not can alter their work schedule. I think we have to take into consideration them being late. As for me, I can do either time, but that's not what I'm thinking about.
Okay. What I was thinking, just in being on council for some time, I know our citizens really are eagerly awaiting to get to the council meeting. And I just don't disagree with what the meeting was set up as. We start our meeting and then sometimes we go straight to the back and close session. It just gives a bad image that council is hiding something and not getting into the actual meeting. And I think that closed session most of the time is a business meeting in which we're dealing with mainly internal issues and with HR, legal advice, things of that nature. And if we could get it standard before our citizens walk in there, and they've been frustrated for too long having to sit through an hour and a half closed session. And by that time, the mood in the room is kind of like, why are you have us sitting here all this time and the meeting's supposed to start? Why you are delaying? Instead of understanding that that's the way the rules were set up to have a closed session once you open the meeting. So I'm strongly in favor of getting that out the way, so then we can have more interactions with our constituents and value their time, and not have them sitting there for an hour and a half closed session.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to highlight that when we move to the auditorium, we have actually purchased the software and have all of the setup that from now on, our council meetings will not only be televised on our cable network, but be available online for our citizens to view. So part of the new site that we're moving into will have a new software application that will make it much more accessible to citizens to see and view. And in some cases, cities even offer the opportunity for them to continue with the online comment process that we're doing here to give people even more opportunities to engage.
Okay, thank you. And going back to Councilman Cuthbert, I know we were making these revisions. I know you wanted to chime in on the rules and.
Yes, I think the one that
Here it is. I pulled it up.
I'd like to focus on this, how many regular meetings we're having a month topic. I like everything that I've heard. I agree that meetings go on too long, but a lot of times, I, I don't know whether we just, that's because we got a lot of work to do. And I don't know how we can do the work without spending the time to do it. Let me look at what's on the screen.
While the council member's talking, this is the one where we were trying to, and I'll ask Anthony to chime in also on this, but we were trying to have a work session so that we could pull all the long presentations out of your major meeting and have a high level action meeting on the second meeting, so you'd have a chance to digest it. The modification recommendation that came from this was that if we did a tie-in to it to say that the work session will be held on the first Tuesday, however, with a modified business meeting, which means that it's only high-level business stuff, so that we're not creating more time saying we're having work sessions every week, and then we're also having all of the business presentations. But we can play with those words however you feel, and I'm not sure, Tony, and I talked about it a little bit, if he wants to chime in on his recommendation on that one.
I just think that once council gets the work session program up and running, you'll quickly find that the business meetings are very short. I mean, we used to have 20, 30-minute business meetings because all you're doing in those meetings is voting. It's the work session where the meat and potatoes come in, where you're getting presentations, you're having discussions and things like that. But yeah, whatever council's most comfortable with easing into this is great. I think as long as you get the program running, you can tweak the hours to match what your needs are as you go forward.
Councilman Calvert?
Well, Madam City Manager, would you propose some language for this Rule 1, Section 1 that incorporates what you said? That is, we would have a abbreviated business meeting in conjunction with our work session meeting. And I don't know whether that's something you can do on the fly, or whether we want to talk about it, talk it through, share with you what our thoughts are, and then table a vote to approve until our meeting on January the 19th. Whatever your thoughts are on that, Madam City Manager. And
so on the fly, I did add something to the rule, and we can also, I think you're gonna have to bring it back to vote on it, but I said during the first meeting, a modified business meeting shall be scheduled as necessary. So if you have some business, you can schedule that with the work session. And it gives you the freedom based on what's on the agenda. If we find that there's some hot topics, sometimes we have things that require a vote of council, and we can't wait to that second meeting. So as necessary, we would have a business meeting with the first meeting. But the second meeting would definitely be business. There will not be any long presentations at the second meeting. That's the goal, is to get the presentations more structured.
Of the month, or say, so it's not like the first meeting of the year. It just says during the first meeting of the month, or something to make clear. We added during the first meeting of the month, a modified business meeting shall be scheduled.
In there.
All right, Councilman Calvert?
I also wonder, I mean, this is all kind of a new approach to things, and I suspect that there will be problems that we cannot anticipate. But one concern that comes to mind is that this may well slow down the public hearing process. Right now, there are 2 times during the month when we might hold public hearings on, say, a zoning change, or something that council finds important to accomplish fairly quickly. If we're back to, or if we go to one opportunity per month to hold a public hearing in order to adopt, order to consider a zoning change of some significance, we may regret the kind of molasses that we've just poured into the machine. So I think there's something to think about here. And let's continue to plow through this. I think the discussion is very helpful and productive. But perhaps once we've gone through, maybe the thing to do is to table this, a vote on it until we've had a chance to look at the changes that the city manager just made on the fly, and the consequences of those changes, and everything else that we have talked about and are going to talk about. And then we vote on it on January the 19th. That's not a motion, but just a thought to people to consider.
Okay, I'm gonna go Councilman Hill, then Councilman Wilson Smith, okay?
Yes, respect your comments, Councilman Coupler. I think this is the time. I mean, you asked for a different type of abbreviation, and she put it in there. And although, you know, we called it on the fly, and then the city attorney came in and said, no, maybe put this in, and she put that in there. So, and we're still getting the best of both worlds. As you know, most of our meetings, when we do these right here, it takes up a lot of time and a lot of questions are being asked. So this right here is just basically the streamline so we can have those intense conversations. So at this point, it seemed like we're going to be able to do both and. So it's not going to limit us the way this modification is, but it will help us work more, in my opinion, expediently and get things done in a faster way, but still have those conversations. Because you know, when you got a presentation come, you all know everybody has questions, and you know, and sometimes we'll have the information in front of us prior to where we can ask those questions, and then sometimes, you know, it'll just be coming just then and there. I mean, at the meeting. So I like to at least try this right here, and let's not just table it just to be tabling it, and let's try this modification here, you know, and see what it'll do for us. I think it will help us move in an expeditiously way. So those are my thoughts on it.
Councilman Wilson Smith.
Thank you so much. My thoughts are to leave things as they are. All of what we do on council should be considered a business meeting anyway. We are there to do the business of the city and the citizens. Shouldn't be separate. We're going to do the business on the first meeting. We're going to do the business on the second meeting. So to divide us, we're simply doing the same thing anyway. We would do the same thing on the first meeting and the same thing on the second meeting. And I think this puts us in a hole. It says, you can't talk about this tonight because you got to wait until the second meeting. It divides us and puts restraints on us. So I think we should just leave it as it is. It is our job to do the business of the city and the citizens at each and every meeting. When we say this is the business meeting, this is the workshop meeting, I think that causes some concerns. And as far as the citizens speaking, citizens have a right to speak at both meetings. That's my 2 cents worth.
Hey, Councilman Wilson Smith, I understand what you're saying about both of those meetings, and I get it. Would you consider having a separate work session before the council meetings? I know it's like adding a third meeting of the month to get through reports and presentations and some of those things, or you just rather just do it at each council meeting?
I think what we need to do is actually define more work. What is a work session? You know, I think because at the last meeting we said we were going to have a work session for what we're doing now. And in my mind, a work session wasn't the council meeting that we're doing right now to go over this. It would have been such as what we do in a retreat or something. So definitions put us all on the same accord. When we write policy or changes, if we can define things so that it puts us all on the same page. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
Okay.
and I know we asked for recommendations
Yes.
to make this more of a work session to get everyone's feedback.
Right.
And I think now is the time to have those discussions. It was tabled last week because we had our regular council meeting, and it's something that we really don't want to rush, but we want everyone to get their feedback and analyze it as they go. Councilman Hill, you had a question?
Yes, every time we meet, we're doing the business of the city. So let's make sure that the public knows that we're doing the business of the city. Anytime we meet in a forum like this, we're doing the business of the city. This meeting right here is doing the business of the city. So I don't want to be saying that, y'all just meeting to go over, one thing, but we're not doing the business of the city in another thing. Anytime we meet, we're doing the business of the city. So, and I can't stress that enough. We're taking time to make sure we get things right. And for us to just say that we don't want to do this or not even try it, I disagree with that. And I think we have provisions in there so we can do both and. So I have no problem with this. The only thing that even in our meetings, not to try to speed things up or things of that nature, we stay so bogged down on presentations and asking questions and things of that nature that you really don't have the time to dissect like we're doing right now. So like a work session, that's still business of the city. So that's just my argument. But if council feel like we need to keep things as they are and have 6 and 7 hour meetings, what have you, then so be it. All change is not good, but all change is not bad either. So,
Councilman Cover.
During our discussion, and I'm not quite sure who.
Okay, you're next.
During our discussion to this point,
Okay.
the idea came up about a work session in addition to the 2 regular meetings. That is a work session meeting, and I think that might be a good middle ground to all of this. We really do have a lot of our meetings are long because we have a lot of serious business to transact, and I don't think we can, with the stroke of a pen and a calendar change, get away from the fact that we've got a lot of serious business to transact. I agree that our meetings are really, it's like running a marathon sometimes. It's an awful lot to ask. I mean, a 5-hour meeting, a 6-hour meeting, and we've had them. So I'd like us to consider keeping 2 regular meetings a month. I think this was what Councilwoman Wilson Smith suggested, keeping the 2 regular meetings a month, but adding a work session as a separate calendared event. And at those work sessions, we could have these presentations from staff, from anyone else that cares to make a presentation that council deems appropriate. And that work session, let's say, when would we hold that? I would suggest on the Monday before the first regular meeting of the month, so that we are kind of fresh from that work session. And that should shorten our first regular meeting of the month significantly. And we could start that work session at the same time that we start the regular meeting. I'm not quite sure at this point whether that's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, but one or the other. I think that might be worthwhile. we've got a lot of work to do, and I think we can allow the time to do the lot of work without putting ourselves through a real stamina test if we set up as a regular event, a work session on the Monday before the first regular meeting of the month.
Okay, and next I'm gonna go to Vice Mayor Smith Lee. You had something to say, then Councilman Hill.
Yes, I was basically was gonna say, my ideas was on the line of Charlie. You know, we have a work session, and then anyone that has presentations, they come in and present it, and then we move forward from there. So
Okay, thank you. Councilman Hill.
I'm not in agreement with having another meeting. So you're talking about 3 meetings along with special meetings that we have all throughout the month. We'll be meeting every week, the way it looks, because a lot of times we have to get things done. So I'm not in favor of having a third meeting. That's just me, but I'll go with the body, but I'm not in favor of that. I would like to try this model here before we add another meeting to our calendar.
Okay, and at this time, we'll move on to the next item. Next rule, it's gonna be there, it was section 3, organization meeting. All right, we are at section 7 now, which is no meeting shall extend after an hour of 10:00 p.m. unless council by affirmative vote of majority of council members votes to extend the meeting. This is only if we decide to move the meeting up. Any feedback?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, we'll move on. For regular scheduled meetings shall fall on the day of a general election. This meeting shall be held instead on the next Tuesday night following that election or any other holiday. This meeting should be instead on the next Tuesday night following that holiday. Any discussion, any questions about that? That's pretty straightforward, Councilman Cuthbert.
I think it would be clearer if we took that phrase or any other holiday and put it up at the beginning put it in a different position in that sentence.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I didn't know you could hear me. Okay, so on this one, we're gonna, you just want me to put up, move any other holiday? I'll make a note of it and we'll make the changes for your final document.
Right, so it would read something like, if a regularly scheduled meeting shall fall on a holiday or the day of a general election, comma, this meeting shall be held instead on the next Tuesday night following that election or holiday.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've made that change.
All right.
Hold on, let's look at, what's that last sentence for?
It's really a repeat to me. This meeting shall be held instead on the next Tuesday night following that holiday.
I think we just said that. I would suggest we take that.
Cut that one out.
Okay, great.
And may I say, that change, the way it is now, we had already put that in there.
No, we're just moving the section, ma'am. So it was in the first section and we moved it to the meeting schedule section. So we just moved the section on.
But the verbiage that we just did was already in there. So when you moved it, then the whole thing would have moved, but I'm fine, I'm fine.
And we've got the word night snuck into that sentence. On the next Tuesday night following that election or holiday.
You want to take out night?
Yes.
Yes. The next Tuesday, that's all you need.
Next Tuesday following the election, okay.
Got it.
Aren't you gonna take out election? Following that holiday.
Right, because
Regular
election
schedule
day is a holiday now.
A holiday.
And election day was not initially a holiday for the city until we adopted the state, so now it fits smoothly.
Right.
All right, well, why don't we take out the last word there, holiday, put a period after following? No, at the very end.
So what about special elections?
Right.
If the city was to have a special election, does that, and it fall on our meeting day? So don't you kind of still need election in there? Because we do have special elections from time to time.
Then council can make that decision at the meeting. We have a special holiday coming up, so one of us moves to not have the meeting.
No, I'm not saying holiday, I say special election.
I thought that's what I said too, but yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I have it, let me make sure I have this right. If a regular scheduled meeting shall fall on a holiday or the day of the general election. So you want me to take that out too and just say shall fall on a holiday, this meeting shall be held instead on the next Tuesday?
No.
No.
Okay,
Well, keep it like that, yeah.
is this correct? Is this the way you, is this correct?
That's
So
fine.
when you say on the day of the general election, you don't mean election day?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, election day.
Is election day a holiday?
And we,
There it is.
It
Well,
is
if it is
now.
a holiday, then why are we saying fall on a holiday or the day of a general election? There's a
because
holiday.
in my opinion, sometimes we have special elections. So we want to cover ourselves for special elections, holidays, or general elections.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on. Next one. Holidays.
The next one was the meeting time. What we made the change on this was say that the council meeting shall begin at 4 p.m. with a closed session with a regular meeting beginning at 5 p.m. unless the majority of council votes on a different time. So you always have the opportunity to move it, change it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next. The next one is place. We just added the public library since we're building out the chamber is going to be at the library. That's the only addition here. Is that okay?
Yes.
This was, like I said, truly a wordsmithing, and then the last part recommended by the attorney, emergency meetings. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
And that was just the setup of the round table. That was just a logistics conversation. Okay.
Everyone is okay with the roundtable format?
Yes.
Councilman Cutler?
Before we leave Rule 1, can we go back to Section 3 for a minute?
Oops, sorry. Here we go. Section 3. Yes, sir.
The last sentence, any changes not submitted in accordance with this section shall not be considered by council. Does that mean that only once every 2 years we can make a change in our rules of council unless we suspend the rules of council in order to make the change?
This is only for the organizational meeting that says that you have to submit them in advance versus when we get to the meeting. You can make changes to your rules at any time, but for the actual organizational meeting, we must get them in advance to include them.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good, because I didn't think we wanted to box
No.
ourselves in.
No.
Good.
This is just the organizational meeting. This is just to allow you all a chance to review what anyone's recommending before showing up at the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, start time, place, freedom of information, roundtable. Next section. This is a little less complex, possibly. Rule clerk and records. We did no changes to clerk of council, docket, form of ordinance, and records of meetings recommended. This was just a change because some of the sections had gone away, and we changed this from being section 6 to section 5. That's the only change on this. Rule section 3. Rule 3, ordinance and amendments now. What was recommended, and I'm going to ask Tony, can you kick in and help me with this one as we talk through ordinance and amendments?
Yeah, I gave a presentation a while back to all of the department heads on ordinances and resolutions, trying to draw the distinction and so we know what to submit, when to submit it, when certain things are required. For whatever reason in the rules of council, we had drawn in here that resolutions require a public comment period. They're only legally required for ordinances. So you're talking about the length of your meetings. A lot of that has to do with every time you bring a resolution up, you offer public comment. The whole idea is that you'll have a formal public hearing on ordinances, and that's distinguishable because it actually has to have a notice requirement, and it has to be published in a newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks prior to having the public hearing. And I think a lot of the department heads were getting confused by that, and they were thinking, well, we had a public comment period, so we satisfied that, and they really hadn't. And so taking that out kind of makes us consistent with what the law actually requires, and it probably would make it a lot more streamlined in terms of your meetings as well.
And this one has to do with funding and appropriations, and we do appropriations only by ordinance. We should not be doing them by resolution. So that's why we took it out on this specific area. So that means that it will only be done by ordinance, which would require public comment and public input. If that's okay?
Okay, any questions from members of council on this? Everyone is understanding where we're going? Okay.
The second one is the same conversation. This is where we're taking the word resolution out and only covering the ordinance as Tony just explained. So same thing here, so that your public hearings, which are required by law, are only for ordinance. Resolutions should not require, I believe we said, public comment. Okay. Section 3, ordinance, introduction of ordinance, and sections with no changes, and recording of ordinances had no changes. Reconsideration, rules with nothing was recommended to change, and we received no changes here. Now, the second section is the rule and order of business, and we have several changes here, starting with the order of business. This is the current structure of our order of business. As you look at our agenda, I'm going to move to the recommended is to clean up, and actually the recommendation was to combine the prayer and the moment of silence, to end the prayer with the moment of silence so that they're not 2 separate items. The other thing which we've done is some numbering was off because we've moved some things around. We moved the city manager's report toward the after new business, where you see a lot of our reports coming in that take quite a bit of time during the business meeting. If you go with the work session, this may be part of the work session, but this is only a paper report versus a presentation. I think that other than that, this is just to clean it up, and I'll go back to, just for council's sake, the original, as you see, followed the flow. We had a lot of communication and special reports. We, I believe, removed that section, which was number 9. Consent item would move forward. Public information period. You all asked initially for that to be moved up earlier, and I need to make sure that's still there. And then it'll go into details on each of these as we move. In our original, 16 and 18 were empty, and it skipped from 15 to 17, and so we cleaned that up in the document. And a lot of this, we'll have to come back to this because the next section goes through discussing each of those sections, if you don't mind, and then we'll come back to the agenda if that is okay.
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 Councilman Cutler, if you have a question?
I wasn't quite sure. Can we discuss that agenda right there, or did?
What I thought would help Mr. Cuthbert is the sections that follow actually talk about pieces of the agenda. So once we confirm the pieces, then we can clean this up any way you all think are deemed necessary.
Okay.
Okay. Public information period. This was a recommendation that came, and basically the recommendation that it would only happen at the second regular business meeting or non-work session would have a public information period. I'll go through these and then we can come back. The second one was each member shall have, it initially said 5. The recommendation was 3 minutes to present information on business and updates from his or her ward, which was part of the current. Information provided during these reports shall be limited to events occurring in the prospective member's ward and shall not include proposals and presentations of any new items by the members. And this would mean that if a council member was going to do a presentation, we would actually put it on the agenda as a presentation versus including it in your time for your ward update. Number 6 was just a numbering change. It was listed as 7 and it actually should be 6. And here is the same thing. It should be listed as 7 versus 8. No change recommended on the closed section, consent agenda, and public information. I will move back to the beginning for questions. Specifically on these 2 changes.
All right, Councilman Cuthbert.
I'd like us to consider taking out the moment of silence. I don't know why we need both a prayer and a moment of silence. I think after the prayer, we can go to the Pledge of Allegiance and forge ahead. I don't mean to be disrespectful of anything, but if we've just had a prayer, it kind of seems like putting two layers of icing on the cake. I would think we could get by just fine with the prayer only, no moment of silence. I wonder how other jurisdictions do it. Does anyone know of any jurisdiction that has both a prayer and a moment of silence? I think the way we got to this point is through evolution. At first, we had a moment of silence. Then we added a prayer without taking out the moment of silence. And now we've got both the prayer and the moment of silence. I mean, I believe in throwing salt over my shoulder, but this seems a little much. And I would suggest we take out the moment of silence.
All right. Everyone's in agreement. Councilwoman Wilson Smith. You're muted, Councilwoman Wilson Smith. Can you unmute?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I am in agreement with Councilman Cuthbert. We do need to take out one or the other. I had suggested the last time that we did this, that we take out moment of silence because we don't need to do both. So I am still in support of taking out moment of silence.
Thank you.
If we're going to have the closed meeting prior to us having a regular meeting, then we don't need a closed meeting in number 3 if we're all in agreement to doing it at 4 or 5 or earlier.
By law, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hill, Councilman Wilson Smith, you finished? Is that all the revisions that you had before I move?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Councilman Hill.
I'm just asking for clarity, but by law, do we have to announce closed meetings, don't we? Do we? I'm asking.
Yes, you have to give the notice for the closed meeting the same manner that you do a regular meeting. I think what's being proposed is there'll be part of a special meeting to precede the regular meeting is what they're talking about. So I think.
Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
I was going to ask you, Tony, could it be a continuation where you had roll call, because you have to do it for closed session, and then do closed session when you come back, you move into prayer, pledge allegiance?
It could, but I think that might defeat what they were trying to accomplish, where they were saying they're having that break kind of gives you that opportunity to make sure people are able to be there at the 5 o'clock.
So we're going to remove closed session.
Okay. Yep.
I think previously we also had moved up the response from previous agendas, so that's already up. We did move my city manager report. I think we said we were taking reports out of this meeting. So I would actually have this to say just response from previous meetings, if that is appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Oh,
Councilman Cutler, you have a question?
yes, when we get to the business or reports from mayor or council members, number 11 in Rule 5.
Mm-hmm.
Madam City Manager, can you put that up on the screen for us?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, you know, if we read this thing literally, it says all we can talk about is events occurring in our respective wards, which is pretty narrow. I mean, it may well be that there are other things that we want to talk about. We may want to talk about a sororities fundraiser. We may want to talk about thanking an employee for a great work done in with, say, the feed program that we had at Thanksgiving. I mean, that's not an event occurring in my ward particularly. And congratulating someone or recognizing someone, as I think the mayor did the other day, recognized Phil Phillips for his many years of service to the city of Petersburg. That's not a ward specific kind of a comment. I don't know why we would limit this to the respective members' ward. I think we've never enforced that restriction, but it's here in the language, and I think we probably ought to take that out. I understand and agree that should not include certainly a motion, but I think that's taken care of elsewhere. Let's take another example, a presentation of any new action items. I mean, suppose a member of council anticipates bringing something forward at the next meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a heads up at our next meeting. I expect that there will be something on the agenda dealing with X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. Let me give you a little background for you to think about before we get to that next meeting. I mean, I don't know quite what the benefit is of putting blinders on us in our efforts to communicate with each other. This is our only opportunity to communicate with each other without violating the Freedom of Information Act in a live exchange or a live kind of discussion. So I think we ought to remove that occurring, limited to events occurring in the respective members' ward.
All right, everyone in agreement? Anyone disagree?
Yes. No disagreement.
All right, Councilman Hart, can you?
Go ahead.
Councilman Hart, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
No disagreements for me.
Okay. All right, Councilman Hill?
We'll change the original language, because that's what it
Okay.
said in the original. That's the actual language that existed.
Okay.
Well, what about
Councilwoman Wilson Smith?
I was simply saying I agree with Councilman Cuthbert. We should not be limited to just items in our ward, because although we are voted in by our ward, we are voted to serve all of the citizens of the city. So this really divides us, and so I'm in agreement with Councilman Cuthbert.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilman Hill and Councilman Cuthbert.
Yes. I think I understand. It's just like when you tell a person, I'm thinking about the minutes. They say go from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, but it's just like when when you ask a person to give at a funeral and you tell them limited to 2 minutes and you know they're gonna go over that time. But I guess the reason was so we won't be just talking on and on and on and on. But I don't know if I have reservations about that just 3 minutes. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm willing to go for it. I know, some members of council may go over a little bit, but I guess that's just so we won't go on and on and on and on like you would do it at a funeral when a minister have to pull your coattail and ask you to sit down. But that's when I guess the chair, meaning the mayor or the vice mayor, or who's up in charge, will get your attention and say, okay, like we do with the citizens. So I guess we can do 3 minutes. I don't know how that's going to work though. So that's just my thought on it.
Councilman Cuthbert.
I have some reservations. I have reservations about the 3 minutes. I mean, I think it ought to be left at 5. And a number of times, I think we've all said, I don't have any business report to bring before council at this time. I mean, there's no compunction. We're not falling down on our job if we don't say something. So I'd leave it at 5, and it's certainly up to council's discretion, the council members' discretion as to whether they use any of those 5 or not. The other thing, at the end of this sentence that's not highlighted, I think we want to take out from his or her ward. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we've got and or the city. I'm sorry.
I
Forget
just added and our city to cover that conversation. So that
okay, good. Okay, I was wondering. I said, gee, golly, I overlooked that.
I think really fast.
Okay, all right. Well, good for you. Well, then I suggest we take out everything that's yellow and we go back to 5 minutes and move on.
I suggest that I agree with that, but that the chair make sure that it's 5 minutes and not 8 or 9 minutes or 10 minutes.
All right, we'll use the timer. We'll use the timer, huh?
Good.
All right.
Use the timer.
All right.
Question for council. The other purpose of this, and Tony and I will both say that, and I'll say it on behalf of Tony and I, what we didn't want to go into, and even though 5 minutes is a lot, is PowerPoint presentations of business that probably should be on the agenda.
Okay.
Was there a consensus that we want to leave proposals and presentations on here too? I know that Mr. Cuthbert said it's how we talk to each other. We're saying what we would do is allow council members to have agenda items if you had something. So you wouldn't have to use your 5 minutes there, but we would add it on the council agenda for you to do the presentations.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Councilman Hill.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then that way that council person can dig in and state their claim on that particular item.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
All right.
Okay, we'll clean this word up, but all of them will say ward or city because you may want to thank somebody citywide. And so I made those adjustments and we'll have it finalized and cleaned up in your document, okay?
Great.
Yes, Councilman Wilson Smith, question?
Yeah, I had a question about the public information period. Is that what we're getting ready to do now?
Yes.
Hold it up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me put my glasses on.
Number 10.
So you're proposing that we do public information period only at one meeting?
That was one of the recommendations that came in, is to do it at the second regular business meeting. You still have public hearings as you do for ISH, but the public information period was recommended to be at the second regular meeting.
Okay, I disagree with that because we're limiting the public. I don't think it's fair to limit the public as to what days they can and cannot come and speak, because the council meetings belong to them, both of them, both council meetings. So I disagree with that one.
Okay. Councilman Cuthbert?
I'm in favor of this restriction. I think we've been pretty badly taken advantage of by some frequent flyers that always appear before us. And you know, we know who's the speakers are going to be before we look at the roster of speakers. You know, I welcome the public's comment, but there's no constitutional right for them to comment, for the public to comment at every at every meeting of council. So I think we've done well. I think this is a good balance. On the one hand, it does limit to one meeting a month, the public information session. On the other hand, it creates an opportunity for the public to comment. So I think it's a good balance between things, and I think we ought to adopt the recommended change.
All right, Councilman Hill.
As much as I want to agree with you, Councilman Coupler, I disagree on this one right here. I think we have to have a period where the public, regardless of if we agree or don't agree, that they be able to speak and address the body, as long as they're doing it within their 3 minutes, and as long as they're doing it professionally and not with any malice intent. I see no need for them not to have, because as Councilman Wilson Smith always said, this is their meeting. And on this right here, I mean, I don't want to, I know we're not messing with anybody First Amendment right, freedom of speech, but I simply don't want to go through the haterade on this one right here. Not saying we're doing it for public opinion and stuff like that. I just don't really want to go through all that right now. So I think we should just go ahead and leave it alone. Go ahead and let whomever, as long as they own a business and they're residents and they do it respectfully, and we keep it at 3 minutes, we just keep it moving. We're used to it now. We're battle tested. So, but whatever the body decides, I'm in agreement with it. What you think, Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor Smith Lee, you want to comment in on it?
Okay, I'm here. I had to unmute. I agree. The public should be able to address their concerns, like Councilwoman Tresca Wilson Smith said, and also Councilman Darren Hill, that everybody should be able to speak, and this is their meeting, as well as, you know, the entire city of Petersburg.
Okay. Now, are you saying that, let's be clear that this is the public information period, limited time to 30 minutes should be part of the order of business at the second regular meeting, non-work session?
It should be at each meeting.
At both meetings.
At every meeting.
No, not every meeting. Both of the scheduled meetings, meaning.
I mean, each scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what each scheduled meeting.
Yes. First and third Tuesday.
Yes. Our scheduled meeting, first and third Tuesday. Correct.
All right, we'll move on. It's the 5 minutes. Okay, we good? Order of business.
Rules and procedures. The following sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There were no recommended changes that came to us. Council interaction with staff was a new rule that was recommended to be rule number 7, which was a previous 7, and I hope this was one city attorney helped the city manager developed. This one says, request for services and or work, including research regarding matters of the city's business from members of city council to any member of the city administration shall be made through the city manager or city manager's designee. All requests for legal services and or work legal research from members of council shall be made directly to the city attorney. Upon determination by the city manager or city attorney at their discretion that such request for information services, including legal services and or work will consume a substantial amount of time or resources, or upon determination of the city manager and city attorney at their discretion that such request for information services, including legal services and or work may be of the interest to other members of council in their official capacity, the city manager or city attorney shall or may share the request and other associated information with all council members and may request confirmation by council of its desire for completion before proceeding or completion with the gathering of such information. This provision such services and or work.
All right, Mr. Williams is there. You want to chime in?
I think it's simply documenting what we already do. Sometimes the question, comes up, in terms of communications with staff, or when we share stuff with all of council. Sometimes there are things, but I think this is just documenting what we already do. And so I think in the future, particularly newer members come on, or if we clarification, we can go to this rule and it'll describe it. But I think it's what we're already currently doing.
Okay. Councilman Cuthbert.
I'd like to look at that first sentence. I think it's got too many loopholes in it. And I would suggest that instead of requests for information, services, and or work, parenthesis, including research, we substitute discussion of matters of city business by a member of council with a member, and then we go back to the yellow language, with a member of the city's administration shall be made through the city manager or the city manager's designee. That is, it's more than just requests for information. It's a discussion about city business. So I'm suggesting discussion of matters of city business by a member of council with and then we go down to member of the city's administration. Right, with any member, that's fine, with any member of the city's administration. So discussion of matters of city business by a member of council with instead of two, with any member of the city's administration shall be made through the city manager or the city manager's designee, period. I think that's what we intend. And I think that makes good sense. It makes for a smooth operation within City Hall. And I've never had the city manager or the city manager's designee tell me, no, you may not talk to Tangela Ennis, as an example, about a drainage problem. But I think we owe it to the city manager to respect that chain of command, so that we are honoring the city manager council form of government. And we're doing that by keeping the city manager in the loop as to conversations that we're having.
Okay. Councilwoman Wilson Smith.
Yes, I think somehow something should be within this particular part, which states that council shall also not be meeting with, let's see, how can I put this? Council members shall not, on behalf of the city, be meeting with other potential who the people that want to buy your land? We should not be, council members should not be holding private meetings with other members with other members to enter into or to discuss agreements about property or meeting with members of the school board without full council or without city administration being present or something to that effect.
I don't know about that.
Okay. Let me see if I can word it differently then. You remember I asked at a meeting, showed you all about the information that the school board member had in the meetings, in the minutes, where the city had given the school board property. Okay, city had not talked about it, but someone had met with a couple of people on council, and that's why they thought that. Or what about if two other members have met with school superintendent and school chair recently, and we know nothing about that? I'm saying that we should not be doing this, and somehow to word it within this.
I have a separate ex parte communications with members of council resolution that I had prepared in Winchester to address what Councilwoman Wilson Smith is talking about. And I suggest, I agree, that's an issue that should be discussed, but I'd suggest considering it as a separate issue, because there are so many fine, intricate details to what she's talking about and distinctions that could be made. And I can certainly revive that ex parte communications resolution and put it on a future agenda. But I think if you tried to quantify it now, it'd probably be a challenge because there are situations where council members are approached, and the question is, well, what do you do with that? And you want to have a whole process in place to be able to address it. So that would be my suggestion.
I agree, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I do too.
All right. So you want to handle that as a separate conversation, okay? And not include that in this part. Any more questions on this section? All right.
Okay, so getting us back, I did take out, based on the feedback that council, let's see, hold on, let's go back here. So we've done this, and oddly enough, there was one area that council expressed concern about. I said a public information period limited to 30 minutes shall be part of the order of business at the regular business meeting, non-work session of council. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think the good news in all of this is that's our wrap up.
Can you go back one more time to what you just said? I couldn't read it that fast.
Oh, I'm
Please.
sorry. I just took out, it says second meeting. It just said at the regular business meeting. I took it out. It said second initially. I said at the regular business meeting.
Now we're saying that before we decide whether we're gonna have, before we make a decision on that though, because aren't we going back to whether it's a business meeting or a workshop meeting? Are we going back to that part?
I think
No, that's all meetings.
That's what I just want to be sure that it's for all meetings. Just say all
we don't want to say all meetings because that would include, for example, you would have to have a public hearing today.
Yeah.
So you don't want to say all. And Tony, you might want to chime in on that one.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of drawing the distinction. I agree with the comments that council is always doing the business of the city, and perhaps, calling it a business meeting doesn't mean that that's the only meeting at which you conduct business. It's just an effort to streamline the operations where you're actually voting on one day, information on both of which are business of the city, but you're doing two different functions on those two different meetings. And now I think you've amended it so you're actually having a business meeting on both days anyway. And you want to do that at just your.
But Tony, the question that came up is, I didn't want to put all meetings because, for example, if you put all meetings, that means even when you have a closed session, you have to have a public information period.
your special meetings. What about your retreat? You want to have a retreat, and then before you open up the retreat, you have to have, public comment period. I agree. You certainly don't want to have it for all meetings.
We're talking about the first and third Tuesday of each month.
It's at your business meetings. You have,
Yeah.
based on the one
Yeah.
that's in front of you now.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
I think was there a consensus on the time, the start time? Was that agreed upon? And the end
Yeah.
time?
Yes.
right, a standing 4 o'clock closed session, yes.
Yes.
Okay, well,
We
everything
can
else.
talk about the end time.
End time.
10 o'clock.
Now you can extend it beyond 10 p.m. Just because, but it just requires you to take action.
Mr. Mayor, I
Well,
agree with the PM. And then if we know the meeting, like we've done in the past, if we know the meeting is gonna go longer, then we can make a motion right then and there to extend it to 12 or 1 o'clock or whatever the case may be.
Councilwoman Wilson Smith?
We just,
I'm sorry, Mr. Hill, were you finished?
no, not really.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, no, we just gotta start putting some restriction on ourselves and just talking and getting to the point and all of that, so we can get out in a timely fashion. Because it's not all based on presentation. Some of it is based on us and how the way we can conduct our business. So we just got to do better in that aspect. I'm finished.
Okay.
All right, Councilwoman Wilson Smith?
Thank you. I don't think we need to put an end time on it, because if we happen to go over, then we have to make a motion to go over. We should just conduct our business, but we can always say and know that if we happen to go to 12 o'clock, that we can't carry on, because once it's 12 o'clock, at 12:01, it's considered a new business day, and our meeting is scheduled for that particular day that it starts on. So if we don't put an end time, we're not locking ourselves in. We can continue just to do the business until we have finished, and not go beyond 12 o'clock.
Sounds good to me.
I disagree with that.
All right, Councilman Cuthbert?
I disagree with it too. I mean, look, we're starting the meetings at 5 o'clock. We're talking about 10 o'clock. 5 hours. That's a heck of a long time. And if we really gotta extend the time and to work beyond 10, then we can, by majority vote, extend the deadline. I don't like messing with the rules of council, but if we have to, on rare occasion, we have to. But I think keeping it at 10, it keeps us in the mindset of, come on, team, let's not have to extend our meeting beyond 5 hours. It kind of gives a presumption that, and it helps to nudge us along. It gets to be 9 o'clock at night, and we need some motivation to conclude our business by 10. And if we're in a tight spot, we can extend the deadline. But I think it ought to stay at 10. I like 10.
All right. And I agree with Councilman Cuthbert. I like 10 as well, because like I said, we're starting a standard 4 o'clock closed session. So you saying from 4 to 10 is actually 6 hours later. After that time, that is, we should be able to keep the clock moving and get our business done within that 6 hour period. So I agree with keeping it as well.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, Councilman Cuthbert.
May we go back to Rule 1, Section 1? That I think we haven't really reached a conclusion on, I believe, as a group, whether we're going to have a regularly scheduled meeting or on a day that's separate from the business meeting or not. And I would advocate that we have a regularly scheduled work session on the Monday before the first regular business meeting of the month. So that if, for example, in February, our first regularly scheduled meeting of the month is February 1. So we would meet, if council were to adopt what I'm suggesting, we would meet on Monday, January 31, at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., whatever the group prefers.
Leap year. No.
What's that?
The question was, what do we do on leap year?
I don't know. I guess if in the worst case, I think we can imagine that it may not happen in the lifetime of any of us, but maybe there's a March 1 is a council day and leap year is on February the 29th. Then we're gonna meet on leap year day, February 29, whatever that Monday is. I think that'll work itself out. All we got to do is look at the calendar and we can tell that this is the Monday before the first Monday. Sorry, this is the Monday before the first Tuesday of the month. And that would be our regularly scheduled work session. And I do see a benefit to having work sessions. And I think this would be a great way to do it. And it would end up shortening our business sessions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I said before,
Councilman Hill.
I said before, I disagree with that concept. I think we should try to do the modification of a work section at our first meeting and then still have somewhat of a meeting towards the end and then go into our regular full business meeting at the third Tuesday of the month. I think that I'm not in favor of adding another meeting on top of two meetings, and that's just my opinion. I'm not going to go back and forth with it, but I'm not in favor of that.
All right, Councilman Hill. This is something I want council to keep in mind. I know we've had that discussion about the whole thing of ex parte communications between council members. Part of why that happens is because council doesn't have a work session to bring a lot of proposals and things of that nature towards the city. So it's kind of gives us an opportunity for a lot of the people that's fishing on doing development here who come and may call myself or any other member of council to meet, to discuss, to look at a proposal. That is something that that should have to be done in a work session, because if you're going to streamline it, we have so many proposals that come down the pipeline and they come to each one of us. This work session will cut down on our requests to meet, to look at developer proposals and things of that nature. They can come on a work session. So it gives council the out from not having so many individual meetings with developers or meetings with other boards or commissions without putting everything in front of the body as a whole. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
As response to what you're saying, you can't do that in that first meeting?
No, you can't. The meeting will be too long. Most of the meetings that we have, especially with when developers may call to pitch a proposal for you to take a look at, you may sit there and lose an hour on that one proposal, and
yeah,
it just extends it. But it's just something I want to extend to council, for council to really ask, what does that look like? Because the city is growing, and it's and that ex parte thing is going to have us tell developers that really don't want to come to a regular council meeting, but would like to show council their proposal during a work session.
You can't call it special. Can you call it special? Can you? Well, so you don't want to call it special meeting for that?
I mean, we can always call a special meeting, but it's right. It all depends. I mean, Councilman Hill and I had a Zoom meeting before this on a restaurant in Petersburg. And that meeting in itself, took a grip of time. So we're going to use the ex parte to say, all right, we're not going to talk to these restaurateurs and developers on their proposals. You can just bring it to this work session. Every first Monday of the month will limit that sort of an interaction. Councilman Cupper?
I don't see any reason to limit that sort of interaction. I applaud Councilman Hill and Mayor Parham for having that discussion. I don't know where this fear of someone making a commitment and binding the city is coming from, but the city attorney will quickly tell us that those binding commitments are not legally enforceable. I can't imagine any developer thinking that a conversation with Charlie or with Sam or with Darren it results in a binding commitment on the part of the city when there hasn't been any vote by council. If anyone thinks that, I think they don't know what makes for a legally enforceable contract against the city. And I think informal discussions are helpful. And a work session is fine, but and discussion can take place there, but there's nothing wrong with a member of council gathering information. That's what we've been elected to do. For example, during this meeting, a citizen that we all know has called me up on my cell phone, and I didn't answer the call. I texted him back, said, I'm in a Zoom meeting. I'll call you when the meeting's over. Now, he may well want to talk about, I don't know, an Easter parade. He may want to talk about a light that's out. He may want to talk about a storm drain issue. He may want to talk about flooding of River Street every time we have a bad rain. I don't know what he wants to talk about, but I don't think we ought to be limited in our discussions with others. And if there's anything worthwhile to bring before City Council, then I'm sure we'll bring it before City Council if we really want City Council to act, because that's the only way City Council can act. So I think this is a needless concern, a needless fear of informal discussions with developers or informal discussions with anybody. Nothing wrong with that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Because of the many nuances and twists as Councilman Cuthbert has began talking about, that's exactly why I suggested talking about the ex parte issue separately if council has an issue. Because there are nuances, but I would say that there are situations where you do have that concern. In fact, the Peabody case contains elements of that we're currently litigating. So I think that is certainly something to talk about at another day, because that's not currently being proposed, and it's something that, as Councilman Cuthbert has pointed out, there are a number of twists too.
Okay. All right. Now this is back to the work session on the first Monday is where we are.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a recommendation on all of this, is that one of the missing components in this that I think would help is, I think we're missing the conversation of what is meant by the work session and what can and cannot happen. We had what we call study sessions where I previously served. But I think what would also help is we show the order of a business meeting. We need to probably come back to you with an order of business for a work session, because I think the thought is that you're not doing business there. But there are businesses. What would come out of a work session that's in your typical is the proclamations and things like that. But what we would do is bring back an agenda for a business meeting, a modified business meeting, which would be one that just focuses on the things that you have, the action items, and then what is a work session schedule. And if we made that section there, and Mr. Williams, you can comment and tell me if this makes sense, I think that may help council to better understand what the work session looks like exactly.
Yeah, like the one-on-one, but I'm gonna.
You can bring it to the office.
Thank you.
Any thoughts?
Thank you.
I agree.
I'll carry that down, and I'll bring my truck around the front. Sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mayor, I think it would help us if we can take some time, and I would also say to you to allow Tony and I to clean this document up and give it to you in your regular format. We bring it back to you for review and approval on the council agenda on our, what's our next meeting? On our meeting on the 19th. Would that be most appropriate?
You muted, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, that will be fine to bring it back to us on the 19th.
It will
Councilman
be
Cutler,
on
if you had your hand up, you had a question about that, or?
Well, I was going to step into the vacuum when you didn't respond. I thought that was a great idea of Aretha's.
Yes, okay.
And we'll vote on it on the 19th of January.
and you'll have a clean document in advance. And what I asked to do for you is for rule number 5, it'll be one augmentation, order of business. You're gonna have one that says order of business, regular business meeting, modified business meeting, and work session, so that we can show you that it's actually gonna still be doing business. Because I think when we say work session, people think of our budget hearing, but this is actually those presentations which we've also pre-identified that we should be giving you, your budget updates, things like that, that are still business of the city. So we will show that in more detail for you.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Okay,
All right,
that's it for me.
that's it. I think that concludes. If there's any other questions or concerns, we'll end this special call meeting. Everyone's good?
Great.
All right. Our next item is adjournment. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.